that your heads are probably exploding with information right now, but we've got just a few more things to kind of jam pack in there that are going to be really important moving forward. One of those is going to be risk management. So, I want to walk you through the calculations on how to actually calculate your positions in order to manage your risk appropriately. It's actually a lot simpler than you think, but a lot of people over skip this step, don't even know about it, and it really should be applied to absolutely every single trade that you're taking. So let's dive in. The first thing that I want you to ask yourself are these three questions. These are going to be your rules and your guidelines that you're going to set for yourself so that you're holding yourself to a standard when you take a position. Okay. So give these a little bit of a thought. You don't have to come up with them right off the top of your head. But the first question is, how much money are you willing to risk in a single trade? And by risk, I mean, how much are you willing to lose? If your stop loss gets triggered, are you willing to take $100 loss on a trade or a $50 loss, $1,000 loss? So for just one single trade, what is that dollar amount that you're actually looking that you'd be able to accept? Okay. The next is, how much are you willing to lose in a single day? Okay. So this really goes into play if you're a day trader specifically, because as a swing trader, you're probably not going to, witness this as much. But sometimes as a swing trader, we'll take one, two, three times, trades a day trying to get that right entry in potentially. And so we've got to at least have some sort of a boundary that says, look, obviously I'm analyzing these markets wrong. I need to step back and take a little breather. So the thing that I want you to think about here is, at what dollar amount do I start to get emotional? Okay. So like the first question there, if we only lose 50 bucks, you're like, that sucks, but let's get back in the game. Let's get out of this again. But let's say, two, three trades in, you're down, 150, $200. Are you starting to revenge trade? Are you starting to get angry? Are you starting to get insecure? The emotions are going to start to arise at a certain dollar amount for you. And so I want you to think about what that is. Maybe you've already experienced that, maybe you haven't, and set that boundary for yourself. And what you're setting this boundary for is so that you can walk away from trading and just get some fresh air, maybe for 12 hours, 24 hours. Just take a breather from the charts. We don't always have to be trading. And sometimes most people just overtrade too much because of that. And they get on emotional binges where they're trying to revenge trade and so forth. So set these boundaries for yourself now so that you don't make these same mistakes. Okay. And then lastly is, how many losses are you willing to take before it impacts you emotionally? So let's just say that, you're not even going to your max amount that you're willing to lose on a trade. And so you're able to withstand maybe like three, four, five, losses in a row before you even get close to your daily loss amount. Okay. But at a certain point, the number of losses that you start to endure over and over and over are going to affect you emotionally. And you need to figure out where that range is at. For me, I don't like losing any more than three losses in a row. So if I'm taking three losses in a row, then I'm looking at something wrong. I'm being too impatient. Maybe subconsciously there's some emotions that are fueling my decisions that I'm not aware of. And I just need to step back from the charts, go for a nice walk, get out, maybe get a good night's rest before diving back in and reanalyzing the markets. Okay. So figure out what that number is for you. And then, so there's some examples that I kind of gave in cohesion with these three questions as well. Maybe make them a little bit simpler for you to answer. So, what do we do with this information here? Well, once we've set these rules out for ourselves, now it comes down to actually, setting our positions. And I'm going to show you a tool that we can use for this too, but I want to show you the math behind it. It's just one simple equation that you're going to have to do every time that you take a position. Okay. So, first is we have to put it out there that your position size is determined by where your stop loss is. So you're not always going to trade with the same amount. So, we start with our account size. Let's say we have a $5,000 account. Okay. But the trade that we want to take, the stop loss is 5% away. That's the right spot to put our stop loss. We don't want to put it any tighter because it might be too tight. And so we've got a really good place for our stop loss. We've got a good entry. And we want to take a position. Well, rule number one says that we're not willing to risk any more than that $50 on this single trade. So that's going to limit us to what our position is. So we have a 5% stop loss, and that 5% is equal to $50 loss. Okay. So the equation for it is that to get your position size, you take that $50 and you divide it by the decimal of that percent. So you take 5%, turn it into a decimal, that's 0.05, and then just take $50 and divide it by 0.05. That's going to tell you what position size you can use. So you might have a $5,000 account, but you cannot use that $5,000, the whole amount of it, because it would go past your rules and guidelines that you've set for yourself in order to manage your risk. Okay. And what happens all too often is that we always trade with the same position or position size, which is usually your whole account or a good portion of it. And that exposes you to more risks than what you realize. And maybe even if you do realize it, then it affects you emotionally. So if you're only comfortable losing $50, but you go in with a $5,000 position on this exact same trade, you're exposing yourself now to 500 or let's see, 5%. So $250. You're exposing yourself to $250 now. And maybe that goes above and beyond what you're willing to risk for the whole day. Okay. So, and that starts to impact you negatively emotionally. So, your position size is calculated by where your stop loss is. You should not adjust your stop loss to allow you to have a bigger position size. That's kind of just a no brainer, but I'm going to throw it in there anyways. So you could take $1,000 position if your stop loss is 5% away of a $5,000 account. One thing that I will mention is that whatever you're willing to risk in a single day or in a single trade typically should not exceed anywhere from about 1 to 5% of your entire account size. So for me personally, I don't like losing any more than 1% of my entire account size. So in one single trade. And and then 3% for the whole day, and then 3 trades for the whole day. So that's kind of my setup that I follow along with. And so in this case here, you want to think about that on what you're willing to lose in a single trade and make sure that it also proportionally impacts your account size. So even if you're comfortable losing $500 in a single trade, but all you have is a $5,000 account, probably not the best risk management, ratio there, because you're willing to lose about what 10% of your entire account in one single trade. That's a bit aggressive, but to each their own. As long as you're doing the math and you understand the risk to it, then you can do the proper calculations and you know where you stand with it all right. So that's how we calculate our risk, you guys, and I want to show you the tool on what we use to actually do it. Okay, so we're going to come up here to the charts, and on TradingView off to the left side here, we're going to go down to this second tab from the icons, and we're going to have short position, long position. We should always be using this tool for absolutely everything. So for trades at least. So the long position is going to go, let's say we place it where we want our entry to be. So let's just say we took an entry right there. Okay, that's where we want our entry to be at. And what we're going to do is we're going to take this is our stop loss, and we're going to put this on the number of where we want our stop loss to be. So let's say we're going to put it underneath the 21-day EMA. Okay, so we put our stop loss underneath there. And then we're looking at this. We run our calculations on where we think the target's going to be. We say, hey, look, I think I've got a 10% chance, or a 10% gain that I can make here. So this number right here in the center is called your risk to reward. Okay, it means that you are trying to gain 3.4 times as much as you're willing to risk and lose. Okay, so if you're willing to lose $100, it means that you're trying to gain $340. Okay, so that's what your risk to reward ratio means. This is really important to have, and I should throw that on there as another question, is you should have a minimum risk to reward ratio that you should not be willing to go under. So for me, I never go under a 2 to 1. I never go under. If I am scalp trading, I never go under a 1.5 to 1. Okay, so everybody's going to be a little bit different. If you're a swing trader, you probably sit maybe around 3 to 1 or 4 to 1 is what you're looking for there, because they're bigger moves. Okay, but you need to have a risk to reward ratio that you follow as well. So I wouldn't take a trade that was like this. Okay, so yeah, I could gain 2.79%, but I'm risking 3%. So I've got a negative risk to reward ratio. Okay, if you have a positive one where you're at least 2 to 1 risk to reward ratio like this, 2, then you can lose what half the time you could lose, and you could still come out break even, or even maybe even a little bit on top. Okay, so that's why the risk to reward ratio is so important, because it allows you to actually take more bad trades and still come out positive if you're managing your risk to reward ratio and not dropping underneath it. Okay, so this is the tool that we use for that. The numbers that are really important on here are really just the risk to reward number. Okay, so this middle number right here, and then the other one is your stop loss. Okay, and the reason being is that this will tell you that you're trying to gain more money than you're willing to lose. And this number right here allows you to calculate your position size. So let's just say 3.13% is what we're sitting at right here. So we would bring up our calculator. So 50 divided by 0.0313 equals 1597. Okay, so we would be willing to take a $1,597 position if we were only willing to risk $50. Okay, so that's how we would do the calculation for that. So let's do one more. Okay, and let's say come back over here. Let's say that we decide to take a trade all the way down here, and we're going to put our stop loss underneath this previous low here, and we're going to put that gain all the way up there. So we've got a beautiful risk reward ratio where we know it's over the 2 to 1 or whatever rule you're going to set for yourself. Ideally, over a 2 to 1 should be the standard. Okay. And then we've got 8.57% now as the stop loss. So that means if I have a $5,000 account and I'm not willing to risk any more than $50 on this trade, then we'd bring back up the calculator and we're just going to go ahead and we're going to take that $50. That's how much we're willing to risk. We're going to divide it by the decimal amount of 8.57%. So we're going to move the decimal over 2 and it's going to be 0.0857. We're going to equal that out. And that means that we can only take a $583 position because we're only willing to risk $50 on this loss here. Okay. Even though we have a $5,000 account, in order to manage our risk, that's what we're able to go in here. Okay. So this is how the risk management calculator works and how we should be calculating our positions based off of where we're putting our stop losses at. Again, we should never put our stop loss tighter or closer together just so that we can take a bigger position, as it obviously exposes you to being liquidated a lot quicker, which at that point is just plain stupidity. Okay. So make sure that you're following these rules. You've set these guidelines and rules for yourself. Add in there the risk to reward ratio. You want a minimum risk to reward ratio that you're willing to accept. Ideally, shouldn't be under a 2 to 1, maybe a 1.5 to 1 at most for maybe scalping. Anything 1 to 1 or below, you're working the odds against you. Okay, so that's everything for this video, you guys. I really hope that you found value in it, and I will see you for the next bonus video as well.